telling me the other day that there was a day where you jumped into the freezing river, and you came out and your lips really were blue. That's not special effects. And he said, "This is the only time I have ever not wanted to be Leonardo DiCaprio." I mean, there had to have been days when you were like, "What did I sign up for?"
Well, I think that there were so many monumental undertakings in this film, and the truth is, I mean, we could talk at great length about the bear sequence, for example, the horse sequence, the bison sequence, the rapid sequence, the fighting with Tom Hardy, which is like a bear in his own right. But it was really the things that were most unpredictable, just a small sequence in the film that you know, most of the stuff was so meticulously planned out. It was so unique for all of us as actors because, you know, this was the first film we'd ever done where we rehearsed meticulously all day long, and every single department needed to work like a Swiss watch. So it was like creating a small play every day and then doing live theater for an hour and a half in natural light. And it was that sort of extreme tension about having to accomplish the day every single day that lent itself to, you know, so many crazy adventures. But it was those sequences that I felt that we didn't plan out so much. For the bear we talked, I mean, this man watched 100 different bear attacks. We had, yeah, like 100 different, you know, departments working simultaneously to achieve some of these, you know, amazing sequences that you see in the movie. But it was, sometimes it was just, you know, Glass walks up a hill and all of a sudden, you know, the bear fur weighs 120 pounds wet, and I'm freezing my ass off, and it became some of the most difficult stuff to do in the movie. So it was a constant surprise, but like I said, we were all there for an adventure, and we worked hard and we worked together, and I think that, you know, every day was an exciting challenge.
I'm sorry, I have to go back to, where do you find bear attacks? Is it you just Google it, or?
Bear.com. Well, it's you know, there's some disturbing videos around in the internet, you know, raping bears too, included.
That's a myth.
But no, and then I interviewed a guy in Montana who, crazy enough, has interviewed more than 100 people that has been into these kind of situations where they have survived or they have witnessed. So it wasn't a specialist, and it's a book by, I don't remember his name, unfortunately, but I had a dinner with him in Montana, and he described me, you know, with precision what exactly happened, how they operate, how they perform, how, you know. So that was the beauty of it, that you know, we wanted to make a scene that in a way, not with any attached emotional thing with her, that basically is a mother who is feeding their cubs, and that's exactly what's happening, and that's the terrifying thing. That's only we realize that we are just creatures, and that, I think that was the thing. But it took a lot of research, a lot of rehearsals, a lot of preparation. Leo really getting to that in a very precise way to get this to the reality, and physically was very demanding for Leo. So I mean, very scary kind of thing, because most of the scene is an analog, is real. So I mean, obviously there's some there's a lot of special effects physically there, also some visual effects there, and all the tricks available. But mostly the scene, the way it works so well, I think that we are very proud about it, is that most of it was done physically with a lot of effort. You know what I mean? It's not pixelized as much as normally we are used to.
Amazing. And this cast is flawless from top to bottom, every single role. And you have, you know, veteran actors that we've seen, like Tom Hardy, and then we have someone like Forrest, who, this is your first movie. I'm sorry to keep reiterating that, I just can't believe it. For you and Will, how did the project come your way?
Well, it was quite a bit of auditioning, and the process was, you know, as hard as the shoot itself for me. And it really, you know, came down to me just blindly, you know, going and executing the scenes as well as I can, and just not knowing if I'll even, you know, step on set. And it really was that dedication that I had to just keep doing it, and not even knowing what I'm getting into. And I don't know, for me it was that process, absolutely.
At Was it from the very beginning? Did they tell you you would be playing Leonardo DiCaprio's son?
He had actually told me about 2 weeks before we started shooting.
Oh, you didn't know?
I didn't know, so it was very much like, you know, I saw it as an experience that where I kept digging deeper and deeper into this character, and you know, every day it was just working with an acting coach and in a hotel room, just screaming, you know, doing all these different the scenes. And even if I didn't get the part, even if that was just the entirety of the process, I learned so much from that, and I would have still taken that as far as I've taken the experiences that I've had on this film.
Did you know you were going to be playing Hugh Glass's son? You just didn't know who was playing Hugh, or?
I did know at a certain point that I was going to be playing the son of Hugh Glass, and of course that was a piece of information that changed the way I stepped into each scene. And yeah.
What did you expect from a guy that is called Forrest Goodluck?
I know, right? I was like, you're always going to get this part, come on. When you heard, like, Leonardo DiCaprio was your dad, did you kind of look in the mirror and go, yeah. And Will, for you, how did you come to join this troupe?
Yeah, I think I can totally relate to the...
Oh, he's British, by the way. That always throws me off.
Yeah, my apologies, yeah. Let's get that out of the way now. Yeah, I can totally relate to, I think, what Forrest was talking about, you know, the process of auditioning being one that is quite blinding. You know, you often put in a lot of hard work and don't always, you know, get to reap the benefits. And I'm very, very fortunate, you know, that on this occasion, you know, the tape that I made from London, Alejandro saw, and he was kind enough to meet me personally and discuss the role further. And it was really, really amazing to find that a man such as himself had a sort of vision for the character that synchronized with my own. You know, that's not always the case. And we talked at length about Bridger and the story, and of course I was elated to be involved. It really was a dream come true to be involved in this project.
And
They're a nostalgic group of men that look at mountain men as almost a spirituality, so to speak, and they integrate themselves in the wilderness and live off the land and truly know how to survive. So they were of great benefit to us. That and a fur trapper's journey, because you know, just to understand the basics of what their day-to-day life was like. There was no historical records of this time period. I mean, this was before, you know, President Polk made United States sea to shining sea. So this Oregon Territory was like the Wild Wild West. It was like the Amazon. There was no laws. There was no writers there. There was no society whatsoever. So it was, you know, Native American stories and journals from the real fur trappers. And then we had these men that really tried to, almost like people that reenacted the Civil War. They reenacted what it would be like to be a fur trapper or a mountain man.
so did you, like, you know, camp out in the cold? Did you, I mean, you can throw a hatchet now.
I think we had a big plan to do that at one point, and then the production, A, it got too cold, and B, we didn't have any more production days, and we had to start shooting.
I know that making every movie is a challenge, but Alejandro, you seem to like to really sort of push the challenge. I mean, I know in Birdman you shot in these long continuous takes, and here your DP, Emmanuel Lubezki, you shot in natural light. Which is so stunning and immediate and visceral. I love that choice, but did anyone try to stop you or say why?
No, I have to say that I personally find myself very surprised that people is so surprised that we went to the real places and shot in natural light. So when they said, you shot in the real places? And I said, yes. Yes. And you shoot with natural light? Yes. And I said, what's wrong with that? Because I mean, it's funny that we are now surprised to. It's like when we eat real apples that are not genetically modified. So really, this is a real apple? Oh my God, that's really weird. Because we are used to this genetic modified food, right? And so, you know, normally in early cinema, the crews and the directors and actors went to the real places, and I don't imagine David Lee used to find why he went to the desert to shoot Lawrence of Arabia. That's a real thing to do. It's just that we are used to now see everything in pixels and computers, but I think that was the right decision. And then the light, I have to say that you know, you compare the complexity and the beauty of the light at that time of the day, in the dusk, it's something that no man can recreate. So, I mean, the artificial film light is unidimensional, is plain, there's no complexity, it's just one color. Not only that you cannot light in the day the forest, how do you do that? You will need how many lamps for that? And we have white lenses, but there's no way to hide it. But why? So you have the real light with all the complexity and the colors, and that's when you see great painters, when you see Caravaggio, is they painted in the right light, or Turner, you know, that's what makes cinema, light and space. So the right space with the right light make a beautiful film. And there was no other choice because we were shooting these long takes, and by the time that we arrived to those locations, it was 2 hours driving, and then, you know, the dressing, the makeup. So we will never have time to do it other way, you know. And I have to say that Calgary, where we shot it, it's one of the most changing weather regions in the world. There's 7 changes sometimes, and variations of 20 degrees. So sometimes in 3 hours you have sun, clouds, rain, snow, sun. So even if we will be shooting differently, the match of the scenes will never be. We'll have a close-up in a cloudy sky, and then the reverse, it will be raining, and it will be a mess. So we have to shoot the light one moment, one slice of light to make sense. So what I'm saying is there was no choice, and the other one, it was the natural decision to make. Tough as hell, because we are not used to that. We control now everything. We were at the mercy of nature, and being in the right time, every day with the right scene rehearsed and ready, it was really difficult logistically. But when you squeeze that, then the film is in ecstasy all the time. It's in that beauty of life. That's what hopefully you felt about it.
It's so visceral. That's what I love about it. I think Will was having flashbacks when you started talking about the cold. He just shivered.
I had a little shiver.
I have to say that we all have post-traumatic syndrome. We are we are so attached to the film.
What was the most difficult part or the most difficult scene for each of you?
Yeah, we've all got plenty. You know, I think as Leo said, we kind of knew what we were getting into to an extent. Of course, the weather and the fact that we were shooting in what was a pretty inhospitable and turbulent environment meant that, you know, there were a lot of surprises. I think when I stepped on set and you know, I heard that I was going to be submerged underwater, I was like, awesome, that's amazing. And the camera comes with me and goes back, and I thought, that's incredible. I've never seen anything like that as part of a battle sequence. I'm so excited. 15 takes later, you know,
It was 2 takes.
It was
It felt like 50.
you know, after rehearsing it meticulously and doing it a few times, you know. Bear in mind, I'm English. I thought I knew what cold was, and rediscovered it. But you know, situations like that, you know, I think for all of us being in an environment that really we'd never even got close to before, you know, truthfully, and not for such an extended period of time. You know, it just threw up some interesting challenges. So for me, that was one of the harder moments, I'd say, if I may.
For you guys?
I mean, they were all like, you know,
Yeah,
challenging babies. They were all, there were too many of them. It was, there were so many things that were just logistically difficult to pull. It's hard to, like I said, it was sometimes the things that I would have never expected that were difficult. But, you know, that was part of the excitement of every single day of going on set, wondering, you know, how we're going to execute this. And you know, I wouldn't give it up for the world.
Was it strange? I mean, did you sometimes find just like, obviously we see what you go through physically, but for an actor whose voice is something that they rely on to communicate, to have to do these scenes where you're conveying this anguish with no voice, I mean, I almost think that would be even more difficult than some of the physical stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I knew that this was going to be somewhat of a silent performance. That was what was, I think, exciting about the prospect of doing the movie, and a challenge at the same time. But, you know, more so than anything, I think I learned a lot about being an actor on this movie. You know, it has a lot to do with trust. It has a lot to do with trusting the people you're working with, giving yourself over to a unique process, and trusting that you know, if the people you're working with are committed like Alejandro is, and he's an incredibly committed director to the point where, you know, he creates a landscape for you in an environment that is so essential and believable and authentic that, you know, you just focus on being in the moment. You rely on your instincts, and you trust the journey. And it was kind of a, you know, it was a beautiful experience for me as an actor, because so much of what I've done, I think, in the last 15 years has been a product of developing projects, working on the screenplay meticulously beforehand, and played incredibly articulate characters. So to like give yourself over to a process and trust a director who you really believe in, who's got great talent and is relentless about, you know, so much has been written about this movie, about how difficult it has been and how specific Alejandro is. I would never want to do a movie like this without a director that wasn't that specific, that wasn't that, you know, aggressive in getting each and every frame absolutely perfect in his mind and his vision. So trusting somebody like that is, you know, I learned a lot as an actor, certainly being able to translate an entire narrative without words and having that relationship it's a very memorable experience for me.
I want to add something. I think Leo is very humble, and he didn't answer the question, but I want to ask it. Because that's not my fault. I think his performance and what you were saying is right. I think that when you are stripped out of words and to convey such a complex emotions as he did in simultaneously mode with the right rhythm and pace, and with all the elements against, I have never seen that. So, I mean, in a way that he was dancing with Chivo tango that has to be incredible, precise, and heartfelt, and being present and reacting to that. And even when everything was absolutely prepared with incredible precision, Leo was always aware and reacting, which for me, acting is reacting. And he was reacting to things that were happening as we were doing, and bringing things and details when he pat the horse, when he said that, or when he looked for a bird and he reacted to that. So when you see the film next time, you will see, once you get across the impact of the images, you go to the nuances of it, all that is included there. And it was something that Leo was doing by just being present, which I found the most difficult thing in the circumstances and the environment that we were. So I think he's, to do things with your eyes and your body language is, I would say, one of the most, I would say, difficult things for anybody. So,
Yeah, I didn't even realize until somebody said there was something like 30 pages without dialogue, because I felt like you were communicating just with your face, which was amazing. And I'm sorry, Forrest, for you, the hardest part. I mean, you're holding your own against Tom Hardy, which is no easy task.
Yeah, no, that scene, of course. I mean, every scene I did had a unique aspect that was like a hump to get over, you know. So, of course, Tom Hardy looming up. Like, the first time I met Tom Hardy, we went to that scene, he just comes up to me, and I've never really talked to him before. He's like, okay, I'm gonna walk up to you with this knife. I'm gonna stab you in the gut. I'm gonna lift up into your lungs and listen to you fucking hard.
Hi, my name's Forrest.
I act sometimes. So that was of course that was just a funny interaction. So still thinking about that. You know, he's so sweet, and he has that side to him where he could kill you, but if he chooses not to. You know.
That's so sweet.
So, but no, there were times where there were scenes like, of course, where I'm in the river and I can't feel my hands at all. And that, of course, like physically or emotionally. So there's just different aspects to each scene that was difficult.
I hate the cold. I can't even imagine. Just a final question. You know, our series is called Movies for Grownups, and it's very rare that you get to see movies that are really made for adults at this period in time. What do you think makes a movie grown up to you, and what was the project where you grew the most? Might have been this one.
All of us? What was the project where I grew the most? I think there were two films for me. Number one was This Boy's Life, my first major motion picture. Just coming from the world of television, watching Robert De Niro on set is just a whole different dynamic in a world that shaped me forever. Watching him, command the set, being able to improvise the way he did, his dedication to his craft was eye-opening for me. And then I'd say the other film where I really felt truly like an adult in the industry was The Aviator, because that was a film that I had been developing for a decade. I was obsessed with playing Howard Hughes, and it was first developed with John Logan and Michael Mann, and I got the opportunity after pressuring Martin Scorsese to have him direct it, and it was the first time I actually felt like a legitimate producer, as well as being an actor and a pivotal part of the entire film, rather than just an actor for hire. So those were the two biggest turning points for me, I think.
Working as a young actor, or any actor now, like getting to share scenes with Robert De Niro, was that intimidating? And are you aware that now you're kind of the Robert De Niro? That you might intimidate people who show up to set?
He is my acting god, so there is no other Robert De Niro. Look, I mean, yes, of course. You watch. He influenced my entire generation. Martin Scorsese and Robert De Niro. I mean, my entire childhood was, my entire teenage years with my friends was just about talking about those two men. So to get the opportunity to work with him and I remember being his age, walking onto a film set, and everything that I experienced there, I remember like it was absolutely yesterday. They're the most vivid memories locked in my mind, and they'll always remain that way. But certainly working with Bob was an incredible experience, because there's just, there's few people that come along, in a lifetime that have that kind of extraordinary talent and that dedication.
And what about for you guys?
I think for me, I did a film in Australia for 6 months when I was about 16, and it was actually in that kind of transitional period that we talk about when we talk about Jim Bridger, where you kind of going from boy to man, and it was very maturing for me. I was under a lot of pressure, I suppose. I'd done a tiny little British independent for about 8 weeks, and then I was on this kind of $150 million production. That shouldn't matter, but just in terms of size, it's very intimidating. And I got to work with a very experienced director, so it was very maturing for me, and I was grateful to be treated like an adult in that environment. I think I craved that, and I needed to grow up, certainly. Still working on that. And this film, undoubtedly, and in reference to the second part of your question about what makes a movie mature, I think Alejandro makes some of the most mature movies that have ever been made, and I think that's because in far too many movies, the truth of what makes us human and the complexities of a human's makeup is not honestly shown. I think all too often in movies we focus on goodies and we focus on baddies, and characters are overtly bad and characters are overtly good, and that's the guy I'm rooting for and that's the villain. And Alejandro represents human beings with a very, very mature vantage point, which is to show all their complexities, their faults, as well as their best attributes. And for me, I can't think of a person I would be more happy to go to work for.
I'm now feeling like a very old filmmaker. Next one will be the children. For me, I remember one thing that it was important for me was after I did my first film, Amores Perros, in Mexico, I got the opportunity to work with Sean Penn, and Sean Penn was one of those actors that I had admired all my life too. And so I have a great cast with Benicio del Toro and Naomi Watts, and I remember that for me it was a huge step, because it was the first time I did this tiny movie in Mexico, and I arrived to to this all completely different order of things in the United States with unions and rules and all these things. I was absolutely lost. Like everybody just do one thing, and I said, well, can you? I remember one little scene that there was a moment that Naomi and Sean was in the car, and I remember that they had to be wet because they come from a scene before that there was rain, so it was kind of dry, and I said, well. Can I have some water in the hair of Sean? Well, the woman of the water hair is in the trailer, so we have to wait. I said, well, can you put it? No, can I do it? The woman came and right, okay, thank you very much. So then I went to the camera and I said, well, now that the clothes needs to be a little bit more. Can I have a little bit more? Can you put it? No, that's the water. And we're the water in the camper. So another 5 minutes to get the girl from the camper just to do this in the water because the other girl cannot do this. So then I was like, I said, okay, and I said, no, I think we need a little bit more. And both are gone. And I said, oh my God. So I said, well, I need more. So let me call it. I said, I will not wait for them. Let me get the water. So I get my bowl of water and I began to do that. And Sean was laughing. And everybody was like, so then the head of the kind of thing come to me and say, you will never do that because you are going to be fired, it's going to be stopped. Why? Because you put in, you cross the union of water up and so that was a huge thing. I said, that's crazy. Anyway, but the first thing that I showed was with Sean. And after dealing with all these things that for me were completely another world, and I have bad English, I don't speak very well, but in that time I was almost like literally, with sign language. And even the accent of English is so different that at that time I got a polyp in my throat. For me, when you talk another language, and I was shouting, I got a kind of a polyp that I have to be surgery after. But it was very, and for me to think in English, in Spanish, and then translate in English, to say the acting, you have to, you have to feel it, tristeza. I didn't have the vocabulary to explain the most basic things, so I was just suffering. But Sean always was so generous and so nice that we were so good. And I remember that suddenly I put the camera with Rodrigo Prieto. We were about to shoot this first scene that Sean has to be extraordinarily sick with the oxygen tank, and it was a walking scene. So it was the first scene for me in the United States, and I said, okay, rolling, ready, Sean, amazing. But Sean was super kind of laughing, and I said, this guy has to be super sick. How can he do that? And he was smoking and funny and okay, roll it. Yeah, I'm ready. Okay, yeah. And then so and he started walking, and actually this is a dead man. And everything was so good and so real, and the pace and everything. And in that moment, suddenly, it was a great revelation when to work with the caliber of the people like that, and when everything, all that stupid things doesn't matter. And that was a breakthrough moment for me to say, wow, this is why. But because he was driving that thing, and then everything disappeared in my role. So it was a beautiful moment.
I love this movie. I love this cast. I would love to see you guys work together, maybe in Hawaii on a rom-com. Just throwing it out there. But genuinely, I just want to say thank you for this movie. I want to remind everyone it opens Christmas Day. Please let everybody know. Go